Yeah, so here we are, Sunday morning, and in Kuala Lumpur, and some of us are young, some of us are old, some of us are doing a meditation retreat, some of us are just coming in for the morning, the weekly Dhamma session. Some of us are probably happy, some of us are possibly sad, some are worried, some are peaceful. We're all of us, a mixture of all of these things. Even those of us who are old, we were young once, and in some ways we're still young. And those of you who are young, you may not know it, but in some ways you may actually be old. So all of these perceptions that we have about our lives and who we are, they're things that have a very great effect on our experience of ourselves and our life. And we need to have a view about ourselves and a view about the world. So it's sometimes people mistake the Buddhist teaching to be encouraging us to just obliterate or destroy our ideas about ourselves and the world, to somehow become some kind of no self, just being a not self somehow. I don't know how that can be done. In fact, you'd probably end up in a mental institution if you really tried. But it can be misunderstood sometimes, these teachings on self and not self and the world and views and perceptions and how we're not supposed to cling to any of them. So it's important, I think, to remember that views and opinions have their place, they have their function. Certainly a sense of self has its place, has its necessary natural function to help us navigate through our lives and through the world. And we need to have that in order to just know what's happening and to be able to live and to relate. And so the Buddhist teaching is really not one that's trying to obliterate any of that. It's trying to help us see it for what it is, help us see things the way that they are. So this is why we have an encouragement to really look into our experience of who we are in Buddhism. And it's not, so again, it's not to adopt a belief about who we are or about who we are not, but rather to use the teachings to help us investigate for ourselves our own experience of life, in our whole sense of identity. So we've got these practices we've been doing. Well, most of you probably know. Maybe many of you have done meditation retreats before, or come to do meditation. Some of the younger ones of you, maybe not. But it involves a lot of sitting quietly with your eyes, usually closed, although they can be open, in a room with nothing happening. Just breathing away, watching your breath. And that's it. Over and over and over, minute by minute, hour by hour. And then sometimes there's some variety where we get up and we do walking meditation. So we walk from one point to another point, back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. And we try to keep it as uninteresting and boring as possible, in order to really help us remember what we're doing. When we practice meditation, we're really trying not to get fascinated by the things of the world or the things of the mind, but cultivate a sense of watching, of awareness, of things actually as they are already. So it helps for things to be quite simple and not to have distractions like a television or a telephone. I haven't asked. I assume you've all been, those of you on the retreat have given up your telephones. Do they have a safe at pubs where everybody gives their telephone into the safe and you only get it in? No? Okay. Well, then you're being trusted with a lot of power in your pockets these days. It used to be just, somebody with a little book and a flashlight under the covers at night in the retreat. You're supposed to not do that and not disturb anybody else. But these days, we all carry around like a control and command center in our pockets. You can talk to people like Star Trek. On the other side of the world, you can actually see their faces and talk to them for free. It's quite amazing. And so it is quite fascinating these days, all the technology, all the advances that we've made, and yet it poses great challenges for those of us interested in starting to see the mind for what it is. Because in order to do that, you really have to be willing to be present for the ordinary, to just not try to fill your mind and emotions with stimulation and distraction, or even if it's not distraction, maybe it's something important, but there needs to be some way where we are able to see what's happening. And so that's why for meditation practice, you set it up in a way which is not going to be very interesting at all. And you take away the distractions, you make it simple, and you also make it quiet, of course. But it's not all about quietness, because the mind is something we have always with us. We always have our minds. So meditation is something that's helping us to deepen our awareness of the mind. And so it's not something that, suddenly the mind comes when it's quiet and there's the right conditions for quiet sitting meditation, and other times we don't have the mind. Obviously, always the mind is there. So in Buddhist practice, we're working with our mind, we're working with our experience of life in the body. So meditation really is the sitting meditation and the walking meditation and the techniques that we do. They're ways to start to train ourselves to look at our life as we live it, and the whole of it. So we start to see our experience in not just in terms of our views and our opinions and our ideas about who I am and who you are and what the world is like, but actually in terms of what we experience. So it's not that our ideas and views are necessarily wrong, although they're always a little bit wrong. None of us have the right view, even though it can really feel like we have the right view. And some people certainly feel like they have the right view. And even if we're Buddhists, we can feel like we have the right view. Now we know we're Buddhists. The Buddha, not those other religions and not those other people out there. We know the truth. The Buddha taught it, and we have the right view. And even if it is the right view, if we're holding it in a way where we're clinging and we're taking it personally, and we're not open to the present moment, we're coming from a pre-existing concept that we have, even if it's the right set of concepts, Buddhist teachings, then we're already off, we're already a little bit deluded, we're already not quite right. So in order to have really a right approach from a Buddhist perspective, we need to be able to let go of our attachments to our own views, our own opinions, our own ideas about ourselves, and be willing to be present for our experience now, in the present moment, whatever it is. So we've been doing contemplating and practicing during the retreat with an emphasis on allowing ourselves to be just as we are, not trying to become, the right kind of peaceful meditators, that we have the idea of a particular state that we should attain and trying to get there, but rather, just practicing a quiet, willing, receptive presence with things as they are, in ourselves, outside, inside. So if it's quiet, okay. If it's noisy, okay. If inside ourselves we feel quiet, okay. We feel noisy, okay. We feel awake, okay. We feel sleepy, okay. Just try to be, as much as possible, awake to the feeling of sleepiness. This is a little trick. Most people don't think that it's possible, but it is actually. It's the way through drowsiness, is to see drowsiness as something that we're experiencing, rather than just becoming drowsy and nodding off. So if we can actually tune into our awareness of what we're experiencing, it's not just I am drowsy, but this is the experience of drowsiness. I've moved back and I'm now aware of an experience, and it's coming from that place of knowing and awareness that we have made a very important shift, a very profound shift, and it's one which can allow us a whole lot of freedom. It really opens the doors to a different way of living. It's the middle way, the Majjhima Patipata that the Buddha talked about. So the middle way, classically, is about avoiding the extremes of asceticism and indulgence. Often people think that either you get pleasure from getting what you want, and so that to an extreme that leads to hedonistic behavior, hedonism, just trying to, so if I had all the money in the world, I could have all the yachts and the, I don't know what, all the chocolates and the fancy televisions and the first-class plane tickets, whatever people dream about, and I'd have all that and I'd be happy. So that's going in that direction, towards the indulgence in sense pleasures, and thinking that we'll get happy by getting what we want. And that's very natural for us to think that way. And then it can actually go the opposite. Once we sort of realize that that's not going to bring us to true happiness, then classically in the Buddha's time, the religious people thought, well, then we have to go the other way. We have to go away from all pleasures, just get rid of all pleasures. And so they would do things like where the naked ascetics, they wouldn't wear any clothes, they wouldn't shave their hair or beards, they wouldn't eat very much food, they did weird practices, which they still do in India. You can go to India and see sadhus who spend their lives like holding their right hand above their head for the whole life, and that's difficult. I mean, it would be difficult to hold your hand up like this, and yet there was an article I saw last year of somebody who had, for the last 37 years or something, had his hand up like this. And, and you have to there's a whole way to sort of, people who don't lie down and just stand, and they have a rope to kind of lean on while they sleep. That you can have a whole life based around trying to, deny yourself pleasure, deny yourself sense pleasure. And you can think that that's the way then to freedom, from being bound by this need for pleasure. And the Buddha said, no, that neither of those ways will take you to freedom. It's the middle way between them. And we can think that what that means then is some kind of gentle, soft, middle-class, easy life. Not too difficult, not too easy, but just right. And in a way, yeah, that is part of it. There's a context where you want an ordinary, normal experience where you're healthy enough and settled enough to focus the mind and practice, and you don't want to be, pulled away into too many sense pleasures. So that's part of it. But I know that there are different ways to reflect on the teachings. And the Thai teacher from our tradition, Ajahn Chah, used to talk about the middle way in a different way too, which is, that the middle way can be when there's some experience that we're having, some emotion, say anger or jealousy or greed, and we know that we shouldn't have it, right? Normally, and this is true for both skillful emotions as well as unskillful emotions. But normally we think that there's only two ways. Either you indulge in it, either you become angry or jealous, or overjoyed if it's a pleasant emotion, or you have to not experience it. You have to get away from it. You have to just deny yourself that. And those are the two ways. So those match up with these two extremes that the Buddha was talking about. Yet there's a middle way there. And the middle way is the way to freedom. And that's where you don't try to block out or deny or not have the experience to avoid it, but rather you allow it to be there, fully experience whatever you have, If you feel angry, you allow the anger to be there, and yet you do not indulge in it. You do not become angry. And how do you do that? How do you have anger and not be angry? Right? Sounds impossible. But it is possible. And this is the trick. This is why it's such an important shift to really start to learn in our meditation practice. To allow feelings and thoughts and emotions and perceptions and views, all of it, allow it to come into the mind, and yet when we're aware, we can really see, this is what it is. This is the feeling of anger. This is, the mind perceiving in this way. This is the feeling of happiness. This is the feeling of jealousy. When we do that, then we've stepped back and we are aware of anger. We're aware of jealousy. And so if we are the awareness, we're not the anger. We're not the jealousy. We're the awareness. So it's like a first step. In the end, you don't want to identify with anything. You don't even want to become the awareness. But in the first, you do. First, you really have to just say, okay, because normally I am my feelings, I am my thoughts. Once I start to meditate, then I can start to see them. Isn't that interesting? I thought I was a peaceful, happy, noble person, but actually I'm full of all these unnoble, unpeaceful, unhappy feelings. Well, it can be a bit humiliating, and yet it's liberating if we don't take it personally, which we shouldn't do, because all of us have these feelings. All of us are pushed and pulled around by the conditions of our lives. It's not our fault. It's not a judgment upon us. So, okay, accepting, this is the way it is, these are the feelings, and then we cultivate a familiarity with awareness. I'm aware of anger. You be the awareness rather than the anger. That allows you to not be afraid to experience the feeling of anger. Anger can come, and I'm the awareness, and there's no compulsion to become angry. There's no compulsion to act from that place. I feel it fully, but it's not the same thing anymore. It's like you've transformed it. It's mental and physical feelings. And the awareness itself is clear and still. So once we start to learn that that's possible, well, all of life becomes our practice situation. Not just the time that we're meditating, sitting and walking. And so the kinds of meditation retreat like this that those of us on the retreat are doing, they're they're practice sessions, ways to start learning this for ourselves, but not times to try to kind of just make the breakthrough, make the insight during this retreat. Didn't do it this time. Okay, maybe next time. It's not to try to attain something now, but it's to start to learn how to be with the stuff of life, the stuff that we experience. And that's something that you don't just stop when the retreat stops. It's like, you can, but why? If we've seen that not practicing in this way, not having awareness and being mindful is going to lead to pain and suffering, because we just keep when we get angry, we get angry and it hurts. When we get jealous, we get jealous and it hurts. When we get happy and it feels great, and then it goes down again, and it hurts. Or we get happy and it feels great, and we think, how can I keep this? How can I keep this? How can I protect it? And then all that tension becomes a lot of stress. And we realize that, then it becomes much more something we want to do for ourselves. We really want to learn, how do I find a way to be with the stuff of my life? The people I'm living with, the situation that I have, whatever it is, health condition, psychological condition, whatever our own karma is. How can I learn to be with this in a way which will lead in the direction of freedom rather than continue in the direction of more and more bondage, just endless, just hoping the conditions are good, and then we'll feel pretty good, and then just hoping they don't get too bad, and then that's basically what we're mostly doing. All of us, over and over and over and over and over again. So once we realize that it's possible to do this, it's not just for the supermen or superwomen who can kind of do the meditation really, really, really well. It's an opportunity for all of us. Then then it becomes interesting. It becomes something we can, in itself, becomes fascinating. So the stuff of our life doesn't have to be fascinating anymore. In fact, it becomes more helpful if it's not too fascinating. So it doesn't pull us away from this task we're now interested in. We become interested in how do I get caught? And we maybe we've had some insight into how we get caught being identified, but it's just we do it again and again, even though we've seen it before. Here we are again, because it's a habit that's been established already, a strong habit. So it's like not just a matter of seeing it once and then, okay, now I know. It's like seeing that we've got, like last night I was talking about, it's like being an addict, realizing that you're addicted, and you need to go to a rehab clinic to start to get help to get off this addiction. So here we are at the rehab clinic at Bub's, the sort of Buddhist life rehab clinic, and we've started the 8-step program rather than this 12-step program, the Eightfold Path of the Buddha, which starts with right view. All the aspects of the path, really it's like a hologram. They're all connected to each other all the time. That's why it's a wheel, represented as a wheel, spokes on a wheel. And yet, I think there's a reason that the first step of the Eightfold Path is right view, seeing things rightly. And then the right view is both conventional right view and right view through insight. And that's the real right view that leads to freedom, is the right view through insight. So the conventional right view is the important work that we do learning the teachings of the Buddha. So coming and reading the scriptures and learning what the Buddha taught, and contemplating and considering for ourselves, and learning how to think about life in ways that accord with what the Buddha taught. And so this is conventional right view. It has to do with opinions and ideas. And that leads to perceptions that we have. But the right view that comes from insight is when we really start to see for ourselves the kind of thing I was just describing. That happiness, that the Four Noble Truths that the Buddha taught, it's not just a set of concepts that we believe in, but it's something that we see for ourselves, that dukkha, suffering, stress, dukkha is here. It's here, whether we want it or not, whether we think it should be or not, whether we're in fortunate circumstances or not. Dukkha is this just not being free from our own, feelings and thoughts and perceptions, being bound. So go up when we feel good and the conditions are good, and to go down when we feel bad and the conditions are bad. And here we are, we're caught like slaves being pushed and pulled around. So once we see that that's the fact, it's not a miserable thing to say that life is dukkha. It's not to say, everything's bad. It's just coming out of denial, just seeing this is the fact. Okay, I'm caught. And that's a great thing. It doesn't feel good, because maybe we hadn't been thinking that before, but it's actually a great thing. Just like for an addict, realizing, wait a minute, I'm addicted, and not fooling themselves anymore is a really good thing. Then there's a lot of hard work involved. And so for us too, a lot of hard work to really see where the roots of that clinging, that attachment, that addiction lie. And for that, again, it's not through adopting ideas or learning concepts. It's having a way to find for ourselves, to see it in our own experience. And so the meditation that we do is really to support that. All the different exercises, many different kinds of ways we can do meditation, all ways of working with the mind towards that end, towards really seeing what is it, where does suffering arise? And so really seeing that second truth, that suffering is not just there in the universe and we can't do anything about it, but it's actually something we are doing. Dukkha of the Four Noble Truths is something we are doing, we're responsible for. It's clinging. It's attaching to the craving that naturally comes up when we want the pleasant and don't want the unpleasant. So it's not saying that we, just like it's not saying that we become these, people who think they're not a self and just say, I'm not a self, not self, I'm no self. It's also not the fact that we need to become desireless people that just don't have any desires. So somebody, gives you a chocolate cake and it doesn't totally tasteless to you, nothing pleasant at all. And somebody gives you, some kind of disgusting mush, totally tasteless, same thing, same as the chocolate cake. It's not necessarily like that, although actually that can happen. Sometimes the heart can change in ways so that the same kinds of desire does not arise around these things. But it's not saying that we don't have the experience of wanting the pleasant and not wanting the unpleasant. That is a natural thing. What it says in the truths is that once we have that, craving, the tanha, there's the upadana, the clinging that comes. There's the clinging to it. And that's really where we can do something about it. Because we're caught in an addiction to wanting what we like and not wanting what we don't like. So once we see that, then it makes more sense to kind of set our lives up and have practices where we actually are around what we don't like. Because we want to work with this. We want to stop the attachment. So that's why, you have renunciation practices. Renunciation really helps in many ways. It helps by simplifying life, giving up things, not because they're bad or evil or wrong necessarily, but you want to go in this direction. It's hard to do so. You need support. So, okay, giving things up helps to simplify. Right? You can't, if you said, okay, I can't have any food in the afternoon, then, when you get restless and, you're doing some practice in the afternoon and you think, okay, right, that's enough, I'm going to have a snack. You can't, so it's just, you put these boundaries up and it helps to simplify. You just know, okay, can't go there, have to stay here. And it helps to feel calm. But it also helps to, intensify the pressure. It turns up the volume a bit. So when we don't have what we want, we start to get intense. We start to feel the feelings that are actually underlying, latent, already there. They start to come into consciousness. So when I got to the monastery 20-some years ago in England, there was I was all inspired by the practice of the Four Noble Truths. I knew enough to know that this was the practice and this is what I wanted to do. And so I got there, and it was in England. I was coming from America. I was 22, and it was November. And it was at this old school, the monastery where I'm now living again, Amaravati, which was built by the Canadian Air Force before the Second World War. And so there are these old barracks buildings that you'd imagine an Air Force troop living in. And they built it as a summer school for kids from London. And it was used to shelter children during the bombing during the Second World War. And then after that it was used as like a summer school for children with problems, and then it was bought by the monastery. So these buildings were not insulated, not made for the winter, and there wasn't enough money at the time to heat them. So I remember, being given, you had a partner, and the two of you had one little electric heater between the two of you, and you lived in separate rooms. So you just decided who was going to be warm when between the two of you. And there was the kind of kitchen, there was sort of showers, there was one wood stove where we took the wood from another monastery to power the stove. And that was, we would cook for 50 people who were there. And then the showers also, just at sort of between, 4:25 and 5:23 would be lukewarm because they'd be heated up by the wood of the wood stove in the kitchen. And it was physically not a very pleasant situation. I got there in November when it gets dark at about 4 in the afternoon, and it's always raining, and there was a lot of building work to do, insulating these buildings, and so it was not pleasant. And then the people who were there as well, they weren't all just bright-eyed, inspiring angels. They were sort of a collection of very eccentric people. And not all of them, people from different countries with different sort of cultural expectations. And I was on the male side, of course, so there were these sort of men and all working together. And so it was also not the people I would choose to live with. So I could see, I don't like this. And yet the teaching of Ajahn Sumedho and the community there was pure, was great, was direct. And the practice, everyone was doing the practice and supporting each other in doing the practice very well. So I thought, this is perfect. I don't like it. And, the teaching is true and correct. So it's good that I don't like it. It's much better than if it was just the way I wanted it, with just the people I wanted to live with. Because this way, I'll have to constantly see my I don't like, it shouldn't be like this. And I need to work with that. If I want to be free, I need to see that and not let that catch me, right? So it's good that if it arises, if I get poked. So these situations, sometimes we can think that if our life is not the way we want it to be, that's a problem. And we can't, maybe we can't really practice until finally we get enough of the conditions the way we want them to be. But that's not the case necessarily. It is good that if it is important that we live in a situation where people are, to the extent that we can, where people are being moral with each other. So if we're in a more immoral situation where people are taking advantage of you, then it may be the wisest thing to get out of that situation. However, people's situations are different. It may be more or less possible, and we have to work with our lives as they are. But as long as there's enough, safety around that we can trust, then even if things are really the way we don't want them to be, it's not a problem. It might actually be good. Once we start to learn how to practice, then it's good. We get to say, okay, good, I'm getting upset by this. Good. Okay, good. Why do I suffer when I get upset? And again, it's not a question to ask like that with the brain. It's a question to ask with the heart when we're observing, really looking, okay, I'm suffering again. Where's the suffering really? There was a story that I've told many times because it was the first time I really took this lesson to heart, that Ajahn Sumedho tells about his first year as a novice, and then when he went to Ajahn Chah's monastery, after that first year, he'd just had a hut in the forest and nothing to do. They just left him there. They brought him his food and then took the food away, the empty, I guess he washed his bowl. And then, and so he saw nobody, had to do nothing, and after a few months of misery, he was in bliss for the whole time. He had very good meditation because nobody was disturbing him, and got had very good insight and all kinds of wonderful states. So then he could tell that he needed a training. He needed what I've just been describing. A situation where you're sort of forced to face the things that you don't want. And then also, I think more than that, he could just see that he needed a sort of a direction and teacher. So even though he knew what the practice was by that point, he when he met the monk who took him to Ajahn Chah's monastery, he was really willing to go. So he went and he gave himself to the practice there at Ajahn Chah's monastery. And there, it wasn't at all the case that you had your own hut in the forest. You did have your own hut, but you were not left alone. You had, the schedule was, up at 2:30 in the morning, and then the chanting at 3, and then the sort of puja would end around 4:30, and then you'd mop the floors and clean everything, and then you'd get your bowl ready and you'd go off on your alms round into the village barefoot, and in the wintertime it was very cold, and you didn't have extra clothing, and you'd walk into the village and then you'd walk back with the food, and then everyone put the food together, and Ajahn Chah would then take all the food and mix it all up together in one big slop, and then you'd sit there and the monks would kind of plop 1 scoop or 2 or 3 of this slop into your bowl on top of sticky rice. It was just sticky rice. and chili. I guess that was how, it's kind of sticky rice chili and all the curries mixed together. And then afterwards, you kind of clean everything, clean your bowl, clean the eating place and everything, and then you go back to your kuti, and then you sweep all around your hut, and then you put your robe out to dry, you wipe down your kuti, and then you have some time on your own in the heat of the middle of the day, after you've eaten this big thing of sticky rice and you've been up since 2 a.m. And so if you don't fall asleep, then you kind of try to meditate, and then at 3, the bell rings, and you haul water with the kind of bamboo sticks with the pails, so you're kind of taking the water out of the pail, and then you sweep, and you mop everything down again, and you sweep the forest. And so it's quite an active day. And sometimes during these afternoons there's a building project too, so you're building some kind of construction, building the wall, or the monks are sewing their robes, or you're making a bowl stand, or you're making a broom, and all these things. So it's quite active. And there was one day Ajahn Sumedho said he was, he lost all these kind of fine, refined states of mind that had come from his meditation, from this protected, quiet situation he had the year before. And he was sweeping, and it's dusty and it's hot, and he was thinking, why we have to do all this work? We're supposed to be meditating. We're monks. Why do we have sweeping the forest? It's a forest. We're sweeping it, and I mean I've had that thought, so I don't know if he was thinking that thought, but when I've been there, I've been thinking, why are we? This is a forest. We're sweeping the forest, and so he was sweeping away and dusting, really in quite a state of like, I'm going to need to go back to that kuti, back in the where I was before. This is, why are we doing this? I shouldn't have to do this. I know how to meditate. Maybe these monks need to do it, but I don't need to. And he was in quite a state. So Ajahn Chah picked the right moment and walked up to him with a big smile on his face and said, "Oh, Sumedho, this monastery's a lot of suffering, isn't it?" And he laughed and walked away. And Ajahn Sumedho, he got it. He got what Ajahn Chah was saying. He was saying, where's the suffering here? Where is the suffering? Is it in the broom? Is it in the forest? Where's the suffering here in this moment? And he could see, Ajahn Sumedho could see, he was doing it to himself. It was all that he was creating around not wanting it to be this way, wanting it to be a different way, thinking it shouldn't be this way, it should be a different way. The shoulds and shouldn'ts, the not wanting, the resistance, the comparing, all of that was creating the suffering. Actually, when you drop that, it's quite a pleasant, peaceful experience. Sweeping, just this way, that way. Forest is quiet and peaceful. It's actually quite peaceful. And so it's that lesson that we have to get. All of us at some point, that we really think it's the stuff of our lives that's making us suffer. And it's not. I mean, the stuff of our lives may be unpleasant. That's different than the suffering of the Four Noble Truths, right? The dukkha of the Four Noble Truths is both pleasant and unpleasant, is dukkha. If we're clinging to it, clinging to wanting it, or clinging to not wanting it. So, even if it's going bad, even if things are not the way we want them to be, that does not mean things are wrong in terms of the Buddha's way. Things are wrong in terms of the practice. It actually can be a good thing. It's kind of good if things aren't going too well. So sometimes people tell me about some bad thing that's happened to them, and if it's not too bad, and if I think they can understand what I'm saying, I'll just say, "Oh, congratulations," because they're suffering, but they know how to practice, and so then they can use that. You can use it. So it's not a bad thing if you're feeling bad, if you know how to practice. That's why it's such a valuable gift, what the Buddha gave us in the practice, to be able to transform our lives, to make it into something else, to make a curse into a blessing. And then, and one of the wonderful things, of course, is that then you don't have to rely on external conditions. It's really something we've got a choice about. We can do this. Because the external conditions are just as they are. Maybe good, maybe bad, maybe pleasant, maybe unpleasant, usually a big mix. The only thing that's certain is that they're uncertain. They're changing all the time. And so we can't rely on them. And that's why it's such a blessing, because to transform our lives into a blessing, into a way of learning how to be free, that's up to us. We can do that. We can do it. So valuing the opportunities that we have to learn how to practice is really something important. And I think that it's a wonderful thing that there's so many people these days becoming more and more interested, because our culture has become more secularized, and science is the new religion, and it's very easy for people in the world to forget, or to not know, or to lose touch with the fact that within even an ancient religion like Buddhism, there's a truth, the jewel of truth that you can really transform your own life through this in a way that science won't be able to teach you how to do. Science is a great, valuable, wonderful benefit to society, and yet it won't teach you how to be free. Having money, it's not bad, not good, it's just what it is. It can be very bad, actually. It can be very good, of course. We tend to think it's going to be very good, but from my observation, it tends to bring lots of problems to people's lives, honestly. Not always, though. Not always. It's just power. And so, basically, those things that we often assume are going to bring us a measure of freedom or happiness are not what's going to really bring us happiness. And the thing that will really bring us happiness, we already have, always had it with us. It's our own mind, our own heart. And then learning how to recognize that and to let go of that which we attach to, that which takes us away from it. That's the real trick. And it's something that I encourage you all to continue to be interested in, because it's really, really, it works, even in this day and age. So I offer those words for your reflection this morning.
Ajahn, maybe you have questions from the floor?
Okay.
Anybody got any question?
Venerable Sir, meditation is a very important part in the spiritual development for Buddhists. My questions are, firstly, is meditation the only way to purify the mind? And secondly, for a beginner or a novice, what advice would you give so that he or she could practice in the right way? And finally, is there a simple way to measure progress? Thank you.
What was the last bit, finally?
Oh, is there a way to know we are progressing all right in meditation?
I see. Okay, yeah. Well, meditation, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it's good to for ourselves to sort of get a feeling for what it is. And one could use the word accurately in different ways. So the way I would understand meditation is sort of mind work, right? And then so that's not something that only encompasses the times that we're doing what I'd call meditation exercises, like the various kinds of sitting meditation, various kinds of walking meditation, all the different meditations that we have as specific techniques. But meditation generally is a way of working with the mind. So, and because we always have our minds with us, like I was saying, so it's like all of life really needs to become our meditation. So meditation is something that needs to expand outwards to encompass all of our life. So that the kinds of exercises that we do are ways of learning how to work with the mind. And then once we do that, well, we don't stop. We just bring that forward. So, is meditation the only way to purify the mind? Well, the mind becoming pure. It's like the mind is pure already. Ajahn Chah used to say, and we just cloud it up. We get caught in this, caught in that. We obstruct it, right? So our task is to just let go of things, stop obstructing it. So it's like a pool of water that's been, the mud has been stirred up, so it's just all cloudy. It looks like dirty water, and it's looked like the water itself is dirty, but it's actually all these mud particles that have been stirred up into it, and it'll continue to be cloudy as long as the water is being stirred. But if we stop, we don't have to purify it by reaching in and taking out every little dust particle, or taking all the water out and filling it with better water, but you just stop stirring it up, and then, it gradually starts to clear. So it's like meditation then includes the lifestyle guidelines and practices we have in the teachings, which is sila. It needs to have sila as part of meditation. So being moral in our actions, in the sense of not intentionally causing harm to ourselves or others, is essential. Because part of what stirs the water up is remorse, and that's natural, to have remorse. Even people who don't feel remorse are sort of numb to it. Like people who are clinically psychopathic, that's the extreme. But all of us sometimes are blind to the effects of what we're doing sometimes. And so then, even for those beings, it may be much later on. There are effects, results to those actions which will cause remorse, because the pure heart does not. The pure heart is a loving heart. Basically, it does not want to cause harm or pain. And so, by establishing our lives in a way where we're not intentionally killing, we're not intentionally stealing, we're not. We're respecting others in our relationships in a way which we're not abusing or taking advantage of anyone, and we're watching our speech. That's a very big one, so kind of not deceiving people and speaking in a way which is not harsh or abusive, and we're respecting our consciousness. So we're not getting drunk or pulling our minds away from ourselves by doing drugs. So by establishing that's part of meditation. So that's part of purifying the mind too. It's setting up so it's the whole thing. Also dana, giving. This is something that it's not just about you kind of classically you should give to monks or give to monasteries or give. It's just about the benefit of giving to anyone. And so this is something one can just see. It has a great benefit when one does it, and you can see it for yourself. Just observe how you feel after you've given a gift. It feels good. You feel happy. And then maybe if you've been greedy one time and you've taken something for yourself that you maybe shouldn't have because you wanted it, and you think, well, I should have it and he shouldn't, or whatever it is, and just okay, well, don't judge too much. Just observe. How do you feel? How does it make you feel? It's painful, actually. There's remorse, actually. So just with this observation, this is meditation, bringing this observation into all of your relationships, your whole life. So purifying the mind is just that process of letting the mud settle. So it's not just the techniques of meditation exercises, but it's the whole practice, really. And then how do you know? So the second part was advice on how to do it. Yeah, okay. And then, that sort of links with the third was how do you know if you're making progress? And so I think having relationships with people who know what the practice is essential. So kalyanamitta, so the spiritual friends and mentors, and then that our situation may be such that one finds a teacher who really knows you very well or somewhat well and can really give you specific advice, although actually that's quite rare. So it may be that just going to retreats and going to the center here, for instance, and reading the scriptures and reflecting yourself. Reflecting yourself is good, but it is important to have reflections from others. I mean, that's one reason why we have these communities of practitioners there. Then you get a real reading. I might have an idea that I'm not selfish anymore. I'm not greedy anymore for things like I did when I became a monk. I thought, okay, well, here I am. I'm giving up all this stuff. I'm giving up my whole life prospects in America and so on, leaving college to come to the monastery because I want to free my heart. And so, of course, I'm not going to care about, biscuits and ice cream and things. And yet, here we are in this situation where the food is like once a day being cooked on this wood stove by people who don't know how to cook. So there's like kind of white rice and chickpeas and onions and soy sauce and kind of a bowl of apples and oranges. And so you're feeling this, you're starving, and then somebody will pass along, some special gift that someone's brought of a bowl of meringues or something, and there they are, and you're just looking at them coming down the line, and you're thinking, well, I'm not greedy, and it's coming down the line, And there's two situations that I've noticed in those situations, those early days, was one would be there wouldn't be many meringues on the plate, and you'd be kind of secretly totting it up. Okay, how many people are in the line? How many on the line? Okay, they're coming down, and that means that he gets one, and then somebody takes two. And you just kind of red face, and you're just thinking, how can he do that? He's a monk, and you're greedy, and you get all upset. And then the other one is that it's a bucket of meringues, so there's more than enough for everyone, right? And you're just trying to keep yourself modest, just like, oh. And you're just filling up on meringue. So you see that there's greed there, and there's jealousy there, and there's, and that's something you didn't think you had, but you're only seeing it because you're in this situation that you put yourself in. So that has to do with renunciation, has to do with other people also being, reflecting it back. It's one of the things you find at the monasteries is you say, you say something to somebody, and they just don't, they kind of respond in a nice way, but they don't really play back in the way that you expected. And then you kind of get a mirror, and you think, oh yeah, that was a bit kind of like boastful of me, wasn't it? And you didn't even see it, but it was just a figure of speech you'd picked up from before, and because you're in relationship with someone who's practicing, you get to see it. So it's that kind of thing where you're helped by relationship with others who are practicing. And I mean, starting the meditation then is like we just have to start from where we're actually at, rather than for where we think we should be or where we want to be. So using the actual experience that we have, and don't think that that's not enough or it's not good but just, okay, this is what I'm working with. So how to learn from this, and so for one person it might be one way, another person a different way, but you're all going in the same direction. It's towards letting go, and it's to encourage a greater awareness.
Now, Ajahn, I just have a question right now. If I want to practice the Buddha Dhamma, right? Okay, should I just practice on meditation? Or should I go to read in all the 5 Nikayas and, go to read on all the, the Dhamma books and so on?
I see. Well, both are good. But I would say meditation, start with meditation. And, if you have a teacher who's well versed in the teachings, then that's good enough. I mean, the different traditions are different. Some start with study, move towards meditation. Some do side by side. Some, like the one I entered, really Thai forest tradition, was start with meditation and experience and living, and then do some study. And then if you want to do further and deeper study, then that can be done once you have some experience and grounding in the practice. So it really depends on the individual. We tend to be quite full of thoughts and views and opinions, we in the West. And Malaysia, us of modern education, let's say. And so I would say probably yourself included. You've gone to school in the sort of modern educational system, and so you know how to discriminative thought and so on. So sometimes, in the traditional cultures, people would be coming to the monastery and they'd just be from farming families, leading buffaloes around. And it would be good to get the mind to start thinking and learning and conceptualizing. But for us, we're just so full of ideas and thoughts. And it's kind of the Ajahn Chah, for the Westerners who came to his monastery in the early days, would just say, okay, wrap your book, here's a plastic bag, tie your books up, put them up on the shelf in the kuti, and read your mind. And that was it. You read your own mind. So that's really the emphasis of the teachers in the tradition that I've been raised in. But of course, you do want to know the teachings too, and it may be more or less helpful. So over time, for me, it's just been a matter of seeing how it affects my mind. Is it going to be helpful, or is it going to take me into ideas about the practice rather than experience of it, or is it going to just it can be, if it becomes too much of a study project, it's a wonderful thing to do, but it's not. I've got to also be doing the meditation. So it really is, there's no one answer to that. It's what is helpful for you. But if you were going to ask me, just offhand, and I had to choose one, I'd say I'd go to meditation retreat, start with meditation. Then you get an idea of really what it is in your own experience.
Okay. We would like to thank Ajahn for the inspiring Dhamma talk. Let's show our gratitude and appreciation to Ajahn again by saying sadhu 3 times. Sadhu.